In today's world, money is often seen as the key to success. It's what people strive for, work hard to accumulate, and sometimes even sacrifice their values for. From the global economy to personal finances, money plays a central role in almost every aspect of life. However, how often do we stop to think about the moral implications of money? What role does ethics play when it comes to wealth? Is money simply a tool for survival and comfort? Or is there a deeper connection between money and morality? For centuries, people have debated whether wealth is inherently good or evil. In fact, many cultures and philosophies have conflicting views on the subject. Some argue that the pursuit of money corrupts individuals and society, while others believe it is a necessary part of life that can be used for good. However, one man, a philosopher and theologian named Al-Ghazali, proposed a unique idea that money could not only coexist with morality, but could actually be a tool for moral development. Born in the 11th century, Al-Ghazali was a leading scholar in the Islamic world. His work covered many subjects, including theology, law, and philosophy. He was a man of great wisdom and spiritual depth, but what truly set him apart was his approach to the relationship between money and morality. While many thinkers of his time focused solely on the spiritual aspects of life, Al-Ghazali went a step further by linking his teachings on ethics to everyday concerns, such as wealth and materialism. He believed that wealth, when used correctly, could serve a greater moral purpose. At the time, many scholars viewed wealth with suspicion. It was often associated with greed and selfishness. For most people, accumulating wealth meant stepping on others to get ahead. It led to a cycle of corruption where the rich became richer and the poor struggled even more. But Al-Ghazali saw things differently. He didn't view wealth as something inherently bad. Instead, he believed that wealth could be a tool for good if approached with the right mindset and the right intentions. Al-Ghazali's views on money were revolutionary because they directly challenged the common perception that wealth was a sign of spiritual failure. In many religious and philosophical systems, wealth was seen as a distraction from a virtuous life. People were encouraged to live simply, to avoid attachment to material things, and to focus on their inner spiritual growth. Yet, Al-Ghazali recognized that wealth was a reality of the world. People needed money to survive, to support their families, and to function in society. So, instead of condemning wealth, he sought to understand how it could be integrated into a moral and spiritual framework. Al-Ghazali's perspective was that money itself was not the problem, but rather how it was used. He saw wealth as a means to achieve greater moral and spiritual growth, but only if it was used with wisdom, generosity, and responsibility. He taught that a person could use their wealth to help others, to support charitable causes, and to live a life of balance between material needs and spiritual well-being. In this way, money could be seen as a tool that facilitated acts of kindness, charity, and ethical behavior. But how could someone who had money live a life of morality? Al-Ghazali emphasized that the key to ethical wealth was in the intention behind the use of money. For Al-Ghazali, it wasn't just about accumulating wealth, but how one chose to spend it. He believed that people should avoid selfishness and greed, as these traits would corrupt their soul. Instead, he advised individuals to seek balance by ensuring that their wealth was used in ways that benefited both themselves and others. In Al-Ghazali's view, wealth was meant to be shared. Generosity was one of the core values he promoted. He encouraged people to spend their money on things that would help improve society, whether it was through supporting the poor, funding education, or contributing to the welfare of the community. For Al-Ghazali, wealth could be a powerful tool for social good. It could empower individuals to uplift their communities, build schools, fund hospitals, and promote justice. One of the most interesting aspects of Al-Ghazali's philosophy is how he connected material wealth to spiritual well-being. He didn't view the pursuit of wealth as incompatible with a spiritual life. Rather, he believed that wealth could help individuals achieve greater spiritual fulfillment. By using money in ways that promoted good, individuals could purify their souls and develop a deeper connection to their faith. In this way, wealth wasn't just a material possession, but a way to fulfill a higher moral purpose. Al-Ghazali's ideas about the relationship between money and morality were ahead of his time. He saw wealth not as a corrupting influence, but as an opportunity for personal growth and social responsibility. In today's world, his teachings remain relevant. In an age where wealth inequality is a major concern, his views offer a perspective that challenges the notion that money is only for personal gain. Instead, Al-Ghazali's work calls on individuals and societies to consider how wealth can be used ethically to benefit others. In the modern world, many people view money as a way to secure power, status, and control. But Al-Ghazali's teachings remind us that wealth should never be seen as an end in itself. It is a means to a greater moral purpose. When approached with the right mindset, money can be a tool for positive change, both on a personal and societal level. Al-Ghazali was not just a scholar. He was a man who lived between the worlds of intellect and spirituality, a thinker whose ideas would ripple through the centuries. Born in 1058 in the city of Tus, which is now in modern-day Iran, he grew up in a time of great intellectual and spiritual upheaval. The Islamic world was at a crossroads, caught between the golden age of scholarship and a growing divide between materialism and spiritualism. Al-Ghazali, however, would go on to carve out a place for himself in history not just as a philosopher, but as a bridge between these seemingly opposing worlds. But what made him stand out among his contemporaries? While other scholars were entrenched in theological debates or focused on the complexities of legal rulings, Al-Ghazali was different. He looked at life through a lens that combined deep intellectual rigor with a rich spiritual practice. His early education was rooted in the classical Islamic sciences, from logic to law to theology. However, it was his spiritual journey that shaped his worldview and, ultimately, his revolutionary ideas on morality and money. His early life as a scholar was marked by great success. By the time he was in his 20s, Al-Ghazali was already teaching at the prestigious Nizamiya Madrasa in Baghdad, one of the greatest centers of learning in the Islamic world. He had already become one of the leading intellectuals of his time, mastering subjects like philosophy, jurisprudence, and theology. Yet, despite all his academic success, something was missing. Al-Ghazali was struck by an inner emptiness, a spiritual void that left him questioning the very foundations of his beliefs. This personal crisis led him on a profound spiritual journey that would change the course of his life. It was during this period of spiritual awakening that Al-Ghazali began to explore a new way of understanding the world. He came to believe that knowledge alone was not enough to guide a person to true wisdom. Instead, true understanding, he argued, required a balance between the intellect and the soul. This realization would be pivotal in his later works, where he would argue that morality and ethics were not just theoretical concepts to be discussed in academic circles, but were intimately tied to one's daily actions and choices, including how one dealt with wealth. Al-Ghazali's decision to retire from his academic position and live a life of contemplation is one of the most significant moments in his life. For several years, he withdrew from the busy world of scholars and politicians to focus entirely on his spiritual growth. He lived simply, dedicating himself to prayer, meditation, and introspection. During this time, he wrote some of his most important works, including the revival of the religious sciences, Ihya Ulum al-Din, a book that would become a cornerstone of Islamic thought. In this work, Al-Ghazali would not only focus on the spiritual aspects of life, but also address practical matters, including the role of money in society. So who exactly was Al-Ghazali? He was a man of deep spiritual insight and intellectual depth. He was a philosopher who believed that true wisdom could only be achieved when intellect and spirituality worked together in harmony. His life was a journey from the rigorous world of academia to a more introspective, spiritual path that sought to understand the world not just through reason, but through a deeper, moral understanding. His philosophy was not just about abstract ideas. It was about practical, everyday living, including how to use wealth responsibly. Al-Ghazali's work was groundbreaking because it integrated spiritual values with the material aspects of life, which many scholars of his time had ignored. Unlike other philosophers who separated the pursuit of knowledge from the practice of morality, Al-Ghazali argued that ethical living could be achieved through the wise use of money and resources. This was a radical idea in a world where wealth was often seen as a corrupting force, a cause of moral decay. His teachings provided a framework for understanding how material wealth could be reconciled with spiritual growth. Al-Ghazali believed that the pursuit of wealth, when done with the right intention, could be a means of developing one's moral character. He encouraged his followers to see wealth not as an end in itself, but as a tool, one that could be used to fulfill a higher moral and spiritual purpose. In the years that followed, Al-Ghazali's influence grew. His ideas were adopted not only by scholars of his time, but also by generations of thinkers who came after him. His work on the ethics of wealth has had a lasting impact, influencing not only Islamic thought, but also the broader conversation on economics, ethics, and morality. Even today, his teachings continue to resonate with those who believe that the pursuit of wealth and spiritual well-being need not be mutually exclusive. Al-Ghazali's legacy is one of integration. He sought to integrate reason with faith, intellect with spirituality, and the material with the moral. He demonstrated that the pursuit of wealth, when approached with ethical considerations, could lead to greater good, both for the individual and for society. His work remains a testament to the power of balance and moderation in a world that often seems to prioritize extremes. Al-Ghazali's quest for knowledge was not just about understanding the world around him. It was a deeper, more personal journey to uncover the ultimate truth about existence, morality, and the purpose of life itself. Born into a world teeming with intellectual debates and spiritual struggles, Al-Ghazali was surrounded by scholars who were experts in philosophy, law, and theology. Yet, despite his success as a student and teacher, something inside him yearned for more. He felt an emptiness, a disconnection between the teachings he delivered and the life he led. This dissonance became the catalyst for one of the most profound intellectual and spiritual transformations in history. In the early years of his career, Al-Ghazali was a rising star in the intellectual circles of the Islamic world. He had mastered complex subjects, from logic to jurisprudence, and was celebrated for his deep understanding of Islamic teachings. Yet, with all his academic achievements, Al-Ghazali began to feel a disconnect between the knowledge he possessed and the spiritual fulfillment he sought. This inner conflict troubled him deeply. He knew that knowledge alone was not enough to bring about a true understanding of life's deeper questions. He was not content with being a scholar who could explain the world's complexities without truly understanding them at a soul level. It was during this period of personal crisis that Al-Ghazali's most profound insight emerged. He realized that the pursuit of knowledge had to be more than an intellectual exercise. It had to be a journey of the heart and soul. Knowledge, to him, was not just about memorizing facts or mastering arguments. It was about seeking the truth that lay beyond the surface of reality. This realization set him on a path of self-discovery, where he would search for answers not only in books, but through personal experience and spiritual reflection. Al-Ghazali's journey into the deeper realms of knowledge led him to a remarkable discovery: that true wisdom could only be achieved through a balance between the intellect and the spirit. His intellectual achievements had brought him far, but they had not provided the peace he was searching for. He began to question everything he had once accepted as truth, from his understanding of the world to the role of material wealth in society. He questioned whether the pursuit of wealth, a central focus of his academic work, could truly lead to happiness and spiritual fulfillment. It was at this crossroads that Al-Ghazali's thoughts began to shift dramatically. Instead of following the conventional wisdom of his time, which saw material wealth as a sign of success and power, Al-Ghazali turned inward. He began to seek spiritual knowledge, focusing on prayer, meditation, and reflection. This was not a retreat from the world, but a deeper engagement with it, one that sought to understand the true nature of wealth and how it could be used in a way that aligned with moral and spiritual values. In his search for a deeper understanding, Al-Ghazali encountered the works of earlier philosophers, both from within the Islamic tradition and beyond. The teachings of Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle and Plato, influenced him greatly. However, it was his study of Islamic mysticism, known as Sufism, that truly shaped his view of the world. Sufism emphasized the importance of inner purity, humility, and the rejection of worldly attachments. For Al-Ghazali, Sufism provided the spiritual framework he had been searching for, one that offered a path to reconcile his intellectual pursuits with his quest for spiritual truth. But it wasn't just about personal transformation. Al-Ghazali believed that the entire society could benefit from this kind of deeper, more ethical approach to wealth. He began to see wealth not as something to hoard or accumulate for personal gain, but as a tool that could be used for the greater good. This was a pivotal moment in his intellectual journey, the realization that money, far from being a corrupting influence, could be part of a moral and spiritual path. Al-Ghazali's philosophical shift was profound because it rejected the prevailing materialistic worldview. He argued that true happiness could not be found in wealth or status, but in living a life aligned with higher moral and spiritual values. He wrote extensively about how wealth should be viewed not as an end in itself, but as a means to a virtuous life. For Al-Ghazali, this was a radical idea, one that would later influence both Islamic economics and broader philosophical thought. Al-Ghazali's turn towards spiritual knowledge didn't mean abandoning reason or intellectual pursuits. In fact, it enhanced his understanding of the world, offering a more holistic perspective. He argued that intellectual knowledge and spiritual wisdom were not opposites. Instead, they complemented each other. In his view, the pursuit of knowledge should be grounded in moral values, and intellectual rigor should go hand in hand with spiritual practice. This was the foundation of his later works, where he explored the relationship between ethics, wealth, and morality. Al-Ghazali's quest for knowledge also led him to question the very foundations of traditional religious thought. He recognized that knowledge without ethics could lead to arrogance and self-righteousness, while ethics without knowledge could lead to misguided actions. His work sought to bridge this gap by integrating the intellectual with the moral. He wanted to show that the pursuit of wealth, when combined with ethical behavior, could lead to a more harmonious and just society. The true turning point in Al-Ghazali's life came when he decided to leave his prestigious academic position and retreat into a life of reflection. This moment marked the beginning of his most influential works, including his famous book, Ihya Ulum al-Din, The Revival of the Religious Sciences. It was in this work that Al-Ghazali outlined his ideas on wealth, ethics, and spirituality in the most comprehensive way. He argued that the moral use of wealth was not just a private concern but a social one that could impact the entire community. Al-Ghazali's search for knowledge and truth was not just about academic success or personal enlightenment. It was about understanding how to live a life of integrity, where wealth could be used to support not just individual success, but the common good. In this way, Al-Ghazali's teachings continue to inspire those who believe that the pursuit of wealth should be guided by moral principles. His message is clear: knowledge is not enough. True wisdom comes when knowledge is paired with an ethical vision, a vision where wealth serves not just the individual, but the greater good of society. Al-Ghazali's view on wealth was unlike anything seen before in the intellectual circles of his time. While many philosophers, theologians, and scholars saw wealth as a source of corruption, distraction, or moral decay, Al-Ghazali's perspective was far more nuanced and deeply rooted in his spiritual beliefs. To him, wealth was not inherently good or evil. It was simply a tool that, depending on how it was used, could lead one toward righteousness or away from it. Al-Ghazali's approach to wealth was revolutionary because it invited a shift in how society viewed material prosperity. In a world where the accumulation of wealth was often equated with success, power, and status, he offered a perspective that challenged the conventional wisdom of his time. Rather than focusing on the idea that wealth corrupts the soul, Al-Ghazali proposed that it could, in fact, be an instrument for moral and spiritual development, if handled with the right intention. In his work Ihya Ulum al-Din, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, Al-Ghazali dedicated entire chapters to the ethical use of wealth, discussing how one should interact with money, the responsibilities wealth entails, and the moral pitfalls that come with it. To Al-Ghazali, wealth was a test, a measure of one's character and spiritual depth. He believed that possessing wealth was not a problem in itself, but how one acquired, used, and viewed that wealth could either purify or corrupt a person's soul. At the heart of Al-Ghazali's teachings on wealth was the idea that the pursuit of material wealth should not be driven by greed or the desire for status. Instead, wealth should be sought with a sense of responsibility and humility. He cautioned against the desire for wealth that stemmed from selfishness or a need to display one's superiority over others. The key, according to Al-Ghazali, was intention. If wealth was pursued for self-aggrandizement, it would inevitably lead the individual away from spiritual growth. However, If it was sought with the intention of benefiting others, whether through charity, philanthropy, or by supporting one's family, it could lead to the development of moral virtues. This understanding of wealth as a tool for personal and spiritual growth was in stark contrast to the views of many of his contemporaries, who often regarded material wealth as a source of temptation, something to be avoided in favor of a more ascetic lifestyle. Al-Ghazali, however, did not advocate for poverty or renunciation of material goods. Rather, he emphasized moderation and balance. Wealth, when used wisely, could enhance a person's life and, more importantly, serve as a means to serve others. In this way, Al-Ghazali showed that material prosperity was not incompatible with moral and spiritual fulfillment. Al-Ghazali's teachings also placed a strong emphasis on the social responsibility that came with wealth. He argued that those who had the means to accumulate wealth had a moral obligation to use it to improve society. This was not just about giving charity. It was about using wealth in a way that created a more just, equitable, and compassionate society. One of the most powerful aspects of Al-Ghazali's philosophy was his belief that wealth could be used to support the community and help those in need. He saw the wealthy as guardians of the social order, responsible not only for their own well-being but for the welfare of others. Wealth could be used to build schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, all of which would contribute to the common good. But this could only be done if wealth was viewed not as a personal possession to be hoarded, but as a gift to be shared for the benefit of others. This notion of using wealth for social good also aligned with his broader ethical teachings, which emphasized the importance of generosity, kindness, and justice. Al-Ghazali saw charity as an essential aspect of wealth, but he also advocated for deeper forms of generosity. For him, wealth should be used in ways that promoted justice and fairness, helping to address the inequalities that existed within society. Wealth, then, was not just about personal satisfaction. It was about creating a world where people could live with dignity, equality, and peace. Al-Ghazali's ideas on wealth were deeply intertwined with his spirituality. He did not see the pursuit of wealth as inherently evil, but he did recognize that it could become a distraction if not kept in check. The danger, he warned, was when individuals allowed their desire for wealth to overshadow their moral and spiritual duties. When people became consumed by the pursuit of material success, they risked losing sight of the higher purposes of life: love, compassion, justice, and spiritual growth. He emphasized that wealth should never be seen as an end in itself, but as a means to achieve something greater. The real purpose of wealth, in Al-Ghazali's view, was not to amass as much as possible, but to use it in a way that supported one's ethical and spiritual development. For example, he advocated for using wealth to purify the soul through acts of charity and service. By giving, a person not only helped others, but also cultivated humility and detachment from materialism. Through such acts, wealth became a means of spiritual growth, rather than a source of moral corruption. Al-Ghazali's philosophy was not about renouncing wealth entirely, but about finding balance. Wealth, when kept in perspective, could coexist with a virtuous and spiritually fulfilling life. It was the attachment to wealth, the obsession with it, that could corrupt the soul. Thus, the goal was not to reject material wealth, but to maintain a sense of balance, ensuring that one's spiritual well-being was never compromised by the desire for more. Al-Ghazali's teachings on wealth have remained relevant across the centuries because they speak to fundamental aspects of human nature. His call for ethical wealth is just as important in today's world as it was in the 11th century. In an era marked by extreme wealth inequality, consumerism, and materialism, his message is a timely reminder that money is not the ultimate measure of success. Rather, it is the ethical use of wealth that determines a person's true worth. In the modern context, Al-Ghazali's teachings challenge us to reconsider our relationship with money. Are we using our wealth to help others, to create positive change, and to support the well-being of our communities? Or are we merely accumulating wealth for ourselves, losing sight of the deeper moral responsibilities that come with it? When we think about money, we often see it as just a tool, something to be used for buying goods, securing comfort, or achieving success. But what if money could be more than that? What if it could become a means of moral development, an instrument that shapes not only our material lives, but also our ethical and spiritual character? This was the radical vision that Al-Ghazali put forward in his exploration of the morality of money. Al-Ghazali's view on money went far beyond traditional economic thinking. Unlike other philosophers who saw wealth as a corrupting influence, Al-Ghazali believed that money could serve a higher moral purpose. He argued that wealth, when approached with the right mindset, could be a means to cultivate virtues such as generosity, justice, and humility. Rather than seeing money as inherently evil or neutral, Al-Ghazali saw it as a mirror, reflecting the character of the person who possessed it and the intentions behind its use. In a world where wealth often represents power, status, and personal success, Al-Ghazali's perspective was a radical challenge. He rejected the idea that money's primary value lies in its ability to elevate individuals above others. Instead, he proposed that the true measure of wealth lies in how it is used to benefit others. For Al-Ghazali, the morality of money was determined not by the amount of wealth one accumulated, but by the way that wealth was put to use. One of the most profound ideas Al-Ghazali introduced was the concept that money's morality depends on the intentions behind it. In his view, wealth was neither good nor bad in itself. What mattered was the purpose for which it was sought and used. If a person pursued wealth solely for personal gain, greed, or status, then that wealth would lead them further from virtue. However, if wealth was pursued with the intention of benefiting others, whether through charity, providing for one's family, or contributing to the greater good, it could become a tool of moral and spiritual development. This idea places a significant emphasis on intention, which is a central theme in Islamic ethics and Al-Ghazali's philosophy. He believed that an individual's inner motivations played a crucial role in shaping their actions and, ultimately, their spiritual state. Money, in this context, was not just a physical resource, it was a reflection of a person's character. A person who viewed money as a means to help others would find that their wealth, despite its material nature, could purify their soul. In contrast, a person who hoarded wealth for personal pleasure or used it to exploit others would find that their wealth deepened their attachment to the material world, clouding their moral judgment. This insight into the moral value of money can be seen as a precursor to modern ideas of ethical finance and responsible wealth management. Just as today, we are increasingly concerned with the social and environmental impact of our financial decisions, Al-Ghazali's philosophy encourages us to ask, how do our choices regarding money reflect our true values? Are we using our wealth to create a positive impact, or are we perpetuating harm? For Al-Ghazali, the highest moral use of money was generosity. He placed a great emphasis on the act of giving, not just as a charitable gesture, but as a central pillar of moral and spiritual life. Giving, whether through direct charity or supporting social causes, was seen as a way to purify the soul and foster humility. Wealth, in this view, becomes a bridge to greater spiritual fulfillment, not through accumulation, but through its distribution. Al-Ghazali's teachings on generosity went beyond mere financial donations. He believed that true generosity involved a willingness to share whatever one had, whether wealth, knowledge, or time. This kind of generosity wasn't just about alleviating material poverty, it was also about addressing spiritual poverty. By sharing wealth, a person not only helped to uplift others, but also nurtured their own character, developing virtues like compassion, humility, and gratitude. In a world where materialism often leads to an insatiable desire for more, Al-Ghazali's philosophy provided a remedy. True wealth comes from giving, not from hoarding. This idea of generosity links directly to Al-Ghazali's broader moral framework, where acts of charity and kindness serve as vehicles for self-improvement. In giving, individuals would learn to detach themselves from the illusion of material permanence and, instead, focus on the transient nature of wealth. Through generosity, they could cultivate a deeper sense of purpose, one that transcended worldly concerns and focused on serving the greater good. Al-Ghazali's views on the morality of money also had a profound societal dimension. He did not see wealth as something solely for the individual, but as a resource that should benefit the entire community. This was an important point in his thought, especially considering the extreme wealth disparities of his time. He believed that those with wealth had a responsibility to use it for the betterment of society. The wealthy were not merely fortunate individuals, they were custodians of the common good, responsible for ensuring that their resources were used to address the needs of the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. This perspective was a call for economic justice, one that resonated not only in Al-Ghazali's time, but also in the modern world. In an era where wealth inequality remains a significant issue, Al-Ghazali's philosophy serves as a reminder that financial resources should be shared and redistributed for the common good. Money should not be concentrated in the hands of a few, but should be spread out to help build a more just and equitable society. Al-Ghazali envisioned a world where wealth was used to support the most vulnerable, to create opportunities for the disadvantaged, and to foster a sense of solidarity among all members of society. Today, Al-Ghazali's teachings on wealth and morality offer a timeless reflection on how we should relate to money. In a world where material success often overshadows moral considerations, Al-Ghazali's message challenges us to rethink our relationship with wealth. His philosophy suggests that money, when used ethically, has the potential to enrich both the individual and society, not just materially, but morally and spiritually as well. As we continue to navigate the complexities of modern economics, Al-Ghazali's insights offer a compelling alternative to the profit-driven, consumerist culture that dominates much of the world today. His ideas encourage us to approach money with a sense of moral responsibility, to use it as a tool for the greater good, and to cultivate generosity and humility in our financial dealings. For Al-Ghazali, the true value of money lies not in what it can buy, but in how it can be used to create a more just, compassionate, and spiritually fulfilled world. Al-Ghazali lived almost 1,000 years ago, yet his teachings about wealth, morality, and the ethical use of money continue to have profound implications for the world we live in today. In a time where materialism often drives economic systems, and the pursuit of profit is seen as the ultimate goal, Al-Ghazali's insights offer a refreshing and deeply humane perspective. His ideas were groundbreaking in his era, and their relevance in modern economics, especially in the context of ethical investing, social responsibility, and sustainable practices, is nothing short of remarkable. In the centuries following his death, Al-Ghazali's works became foundational in Islamic thought, shaping the development of Islamic economics. His ideas challenged the prevailing notion that wealth is purely a material pursuit, instead framing it as a tool that could lead to greater moral and social good. His emphasis on the ethical implications of money and the importance of generosity and social responsibility paved the way for a system of thought that blended economic theory with moral and spiritual values. Al-Ghazali's views on wealth introduced a shift in the economic paradigms of his time. While most thinkers of the medieval period were focused on the accumulation of wealth and the material aspects of economics, Al-Ghazali turned the conversation toward its moral and ethical dimensions. His teachings laid the foundation for what would later become known as Islamic economics, a system that seeks to integrate moral values with economic practices. One of the core principles of Islamic economics, which has gained attention in the modern world, is the prohibition of usury, known as riba in Islamic law. This principle is based on the idea that wealth should be earned through ethical means and that excessive profit derived from exploiting others is not morally acceptable. In this light, Al-Ghazali's teachings about wealth and morality directly influence this aspect of Islamic economic theory, which aims to promote fairness, justice, and the equitable distribution of wealth. In modern economics, usury is still a contentious issue, particularly in the context of the global banking system, which often relies on interest-based financial practices. Al-Ghazali's ideas about money encourage a deeper reflection on how economic systems can exploit vulnerable populations and how wealth can be distributed more equitably, rather than concentrating in the hands of a few. His thoughts on wealth also lay the groundwork for alternative financial systems that focus on social responsibility, such as ethical investing and sustainable finance. Al-Ghazali's philosophy has made an indelible mark on the concept of socially responsible investing, SRI, and impact investing. These modern investment strategies focus not only on financial returns, but also on social and environmental impacts. The core of SRI is similar to Al-Ghazali's philosophy. Investments should align with moral and ethical values. Al-Ghazali's insistence on using wealth to uplift society, support the common good, and avoid exploitation resonates with the guiding principles of these investment strategies. For example, Companies involved in exploitative practices, such as polluting the environment or exploiting workers, would likely be deemed unethical by Al-Ghazali standards. On the other hand, investments that promote sustainability, fair labor practices, and community welfare would align more closely with his ideas of the moral use of money. In this way, Al-Ghazali's thought provides a framework for investors and financial institutions seeking to balance profitability with social good. Al-Ghazali's influence also extends to Islamic finance, which has gained significant traction in recent years. Islamic finance operates on principles similar to those Al-Ghazali espoused, particularly the idea that wealth should be used ethically and in a way that promotes justice. Islamic banks, for instance, avoid charging interest on loans and instead focus on profit-sharing arrangements that align with Al-Ghazali's principles of fairness and equity. This approach has influenced not only Islamic countries, but also ethical investors worldwide, who seek to support ventures that are both profitable and socially responsible. One of the key elements of Al-Ghazali's economic vision was his belief that wealth should not be used to serve only individual desires, but should benefit society as a whole. In his writings, he emphasizes the role of wealth in promoting social justice, helping the poor, and supporting institutions that serve the public good, such as schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. This vision mirrors the modern focus on corporate social responsibility, CSR, and sustainable business practices, which have become key topics in today's business world. Al-Ghazali's ideas about wealth also challenge the prevailing notion that economic success is solely measured by profit margins. Instead, he proposed that the true measure of success lies in how wealth is used to support the well-being of society and contribute to the greater good. This approach has influenced modern discussions around sustainable business practices, where companies are now being evaluated not only on their financial performance, but also on their environmental impact, treatment of employees, and contribution to the community. In a world where inequality continues to grow and financial crises are often caused by speculative behavior and short-term profit motives, Al-Ghazali's teachings provide a timely reminder of the moral and ethical dimensions of wealth. His insights challenge us to rethink how we view money and economics. Instead of seeing wealth as a sign of personal success or a tool for domination, Al-Ghazali encourages us to view it as a means of serving humanity, promoting justice, and fostering spiritual growth. The rise of ethical consumerism and impact-driven businesses in the 21st century suggests that Al-Ghazali's ideas may be more relevant than ever. Consumers today are increasingly concerned with how products are made, who benefits from their production, and whether companies are acting ethically. This shift in consumer behavior mirrors Al-Ghazali's emphasis on the moral responsibility of wealth, urging both individuals and corporations to make choices that align with ethical and spiritual values. Furthermore, Al-Ghazali's teachings on the role of wealth in building a just and equitable society have inspired global movements for economic justice. From campaigns against corporate tax evasion to the growing call for a more equitable distribution of wealth, Al-Ghazali's ideas have contributed to the broader conversation on how economic systems can be reimagined to serve the common good. Al-Ghazali's teachings offer a timeless blueprint for a more ethical, just, and sustainable approach to wealth and economics. His focus on the moral use of money challenges us to reconsider the ways in which our financial decisions impact not only our own lives, but the lives of others and the world around us. His legacy endures because it speaks to a fundamental truth. Wealth, when used wisely and with the right intentions, can be a powerful force for good, both in our personal lives and in society as a whole. As the centuries have passed, the teachings of Al-Ghazali have continued to reverberate throughout the world, transcending time and geography. His revolutionary views on the ethical use of money, wealth, and morality have had a profound influence not only within the realm of Islamic economics, but also in broader global conversations about how wealth should be perceived and utilized. Today, Al-Ghazali's philosophy remains deeply relevant in a world where economic systems often prioritize profit over people, and wealth inequality continues to rise at alarming rates. Al-Ghazali's legacy is one that challenges us to rethink the very foundations of our economic practices. His message was clear: wealth, in itself, is neither good nor evil. It is the way we use it that defines its value. Money, for Al-Ghazali, was not a pursuit to be chased mindlessly for personal gain or societal dominance. Instead, it was a means by which individuals could serve a higher purpose, one that benefits both the individual and society at large. Al-Ghazali's teachings provide a blueprint for an ethical approach to wealth that resonates with modern ideas of sustainable economics and ethical investing. Unlike the traditional view that wealth is primarily for personal consumption and social status, Al-Ghazali advocated for a mindset where money was used as a tool for societal good. His philosophy promoted the idea that wealth could serve a much greater purpose when it was directed toward improving the lives of others, addressing inequality, and fostering spiritual and social well-being. In Al-Ghazali's world, wealth was meant to be shared, not hoarded. This aligns closely with modern movements for economic justice, where the wealthy are urged to take on greater social responsibility. Al-Ghazali's teachings remind us that money is not just a personal asset, but a collective resource that should be used to lift others from poverty, support education, healthcare, and the welfare of the community. This perspective turns wealth into a moral obligation, urging those with resources to think about how their fortunes can contribute to the broader good. One of the most unique aspects of Al-Ghazali's philosophy is how he intertwined the spiritual and material aspects of life. In a world where the pursuit of wealth is often seen as inherently separate from spiritual well-being, Al-Ghazali bridged this gap, suggesting that wealth and spirituality could coexist if approached with the right mindset. He believed that wealth should never become an obstacle to spiritual growth. Instead, it should be a means to achieve a higher level of self-awareness and moral consciousness. In Al-Ghazali's view, the ethical use of money was not just a social or economic responsibility, it was a spiritual duty. By using wealth to help others, to build a just society, and to support causes that promoted the common good, individuals could purify their souls and draw closer to their faith. He encouraged people to reflect on their relationship with money, to ask themselves whether their wealth was serving a greater moral purpose or simply fueling greed and material desire. This integration of ethics and spirituality into the financial realm remains a powerful concept today, especially in discussions surrounding conscious capitalism and the moral economy. Al-Ghazali's legacy encourages individuals to consider how their financial choices align with their values, whether in their personal lives, in the marketplace, or in broader economic systems. While Al-Ghazali's influence began within the Islamic world, his ideas about wealth and morality have had far-reaching implications. As societies around the globe face increasing inequality, environmental degradation, and social unrest, the questions Al-Ghazali raised about the ethical use of wealth are more pertinent than ever. His philosophy calls for a shift in how we view success, not as an individual accumulation of wealth, but as the ability to contribute to the flourishing of society. Al-Ghazali's influence can be seen today in movements for economic justice, ethical finance, and social entrepreneurship. In the world of finance, his teachings have shaped the development of Islamic banking systems, which avoid interest-based transactions in favor of profit-sharing models that align with his ethical principles. These financial systems promote fairness, justice, and equitable wealth distribution, values at the heart of Al-Ghazali's philosophy. Moreover, Al-Ghazali's impact extends beyond the financial sector. His ideas resonate in the growing trend of impact investing, where investors focus not only on financial returns, but also on creating positive social and environmental outcomes. Today, ethical investors look for opportunities to invest in projects that promote sustainability, reduce poverty, and support communities in need, core ideas that echo Al-Ghazali's moral vision. In a world where materialism often overshadows moral and ethical concerns, Al-Ghazali's legacy offers a timely reminder that wealth can and should serve a higher purpose. His call for the responsible use of money, his emphasis on generosity and fairness, and his integration of spirituality into financial matters challenge us to think differently about the role of wealth in our lives. As we confront global challenges such as climate change, wealth inequality, and social injustice, Al-Ghazali's teachings provide a framework for reimagining a more just and equitable world. His philosophy urges us to ask critical questions about how we acquire wealth, how we use it, and whether our financial decisions align with our ethical and spiritual values. The modern world often places wealth at the center of success and power, But Al-Ghazali's work challenges this narrative. His teachings call on individuals and societies to use their resources not for personal gain, but for the benefit of all. Wealth, in this view, is a means to an end, a tool for building a better, more compassionate world. A call to action, living the legacy of Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali's legacy is not just one of intellectual significance, it is a call to action. His philosophy challenges us to reflect on our own relationship with wealth and to consider how we can use our resources to create a more ethical, just, and sustainable world. Whether we are individuals making financial decisions in our personal lives, investors seeking socially responsible opportunities, or policymakers shaping economic systems, Al-Ghazali's teachings offer guidance on how to navigate the complexities of wealth with integrity and purpose.